Welcome back, everyone. Greg here. I missed you so much. Now, Ryan's out this week, but I promise you he'll be back to join us for our breakdowns. He's not locked in some rich dude's cage in Queens or something, I promise.
Let's have some fun.
This is Season 11, Episodes 1 and 2, Something's Coming, and thank you for your service. Let's jump in. Mirroring AHS seasons like Roanoke, there was very little details and zero production footage prior to the premiere, which led to a little bit of controversy in July, when the show's fan accounts organized a strike until FX or Ryan Murphy formally acknowledged Season 11. Now here we are, AHS is back in the Big Apple, and this season is focused on 1980s crime centering on a leather-clad serial killer hunting gay men, and an emerging epidemic. The tone and subject matter for this season is very similar to the 1980 William Friedkin film Cruising, starring Al Pacino. So far this season seems to go with realism over the fantastical and supernatural. The camp is toned down too. The episode kicks off in 1981 with the beheading of a closeted leather daddy, who is the latest in a series of gay murders to hit New York City. Police detective Patrick Reed, portrayed by Russell Tovey, is brought in to investigate, and we quickly learn that he's in a closeted relationship with Gino, played by Joe Mantello, a reporter for gay publication The Native. Shocking absolutely no one, the relationship between a down-low cop and a news journalist isn't going well. You see, Gino resents Patrick for withholding details about this investigation. Next, we meet Adam, played by Charlie Carver, who ends up unknowingly cruising Central Park with his roommate Sully to heal his broken heart. Sadly, Sully ends up getting kidnapped by AHS's rubber man after he got the Bane treatment. Alright, that was a terrible joke, but this is Big Daddy, and we'll get back to him later. Adam reports Sully's disappearance to Patrick, but is essentially told to go home and maybe Sully will pop up later. Thanks, Patrick. Adam decides to take matters into his own hands, which leads us to theater legend Patti LuPone serenading naked gay men in a bathhouse. Her character is named Kathy, and so far she provides lovely background music as Adam spots a photo of Big Daddy hanging in the bathhouse. This leads us to studio photographer Theo, played by Isaac Powell. The last time we saw him, he was impregnated with an alien baby. Now, Theo's character could take inspiration from the famous photographer Robert Mapplethorpe, whose work was focused on examining New York City's gay male BDSM subculture in the late 60s and early 70s. Zachary Quinto is back, and he plays Theo's sugar daddy Sam, and with the help of a boatload of cocaine, Sam dismisses Theo's fears. While this season definitely feels more grounded, this is still AHS, so this season has a ghost element with Big Daddy, as Sam and Theo invite an aspiring actor named Freddie to their studio for an interesting photo shoot.
Get naked, Freddy.
Sam seems nice. When asked if he knows anything about Big Daddy, Sam tells Theo that he's probably dead, which is probably a lie. Only moments later, we see Big Daddy again in the bathhouse with poor Freddie. Meanwhile, Gino sits down with Henry, portrayed by AHS vet Dennis O'Hare, and here we get exposition on Big Daddy. Henry says that Big Daddy looks for desperate bar patrons, and all of whom are never seen again. He also makes note that the victims tend to drink Mai Tais. Now, while it's not clear if Henry had a hand in this, Gino is drugged and kidnapped moments after the conversation. Now, while all of this craziness is going down, oh yeah, Billy freaking Lord is here. She's a doctor named Hannah who's investigating a potential epidemic developing on Fire Island. The deers are infected, so the solution to the problem is of course guns.
We're gonna have to arm up and shoot down every deer on this island.
In episode 2, Thank You for Your Service, Gino awakens to find himself tied down, and we get a disturbing torture scene that abruptly ends when the faceless surgeon finds out that he's a former Marine. Hence the title, Thank You for Your Service. A few things of note before that, the surgeon also spoke of a brewing war, one that Gino is now apparently served in, and before he releases Gino, he tells him that no cop will care, let alone investigate, so don't bother trying to find him. We're back with Hannah at the clinic where she diagnoses Sam and tells him to abstain from sex while he's on bed rest. Yeah, I don't like this either, Bad News Bears is on the way. And next we meet Mr. Whiteley, aka Gino's kidnapper, and he is creepy. Now, Mr. Whiteley's MO seems very similar to a real-life case in 90s New York. In 2001, Richard Rogers, a gay man and surgical nurse in New York, was finally arrested for the murders of two men in the early 90s. Both men's bodies were found in New Jersey dismembered and placed into several bags. And authorities suspected that Rogers murdered more men in the same fashion, including picking up victims in piano bars. Back with Gino, he goes right back to work over at the Native, where Adam comes up with a great plan to start a hotline for generating tips about the slayings. It works, but unfortunately the cops didn't appreciate Adam's help, so they try to intimidate him into shutting it down. This is where Patrick tells Adam to go directly to him from now on for anything on the murders. Patrick seems like a nice guy, but we're not too sure about his motives here, especially after the amazing Leslie Grossman, who plays Patrick's wife Barbara, talks to Gino. She hands over a box of Patrick's things that she found among his belongings. There's a handkerchief, poppers, and more. You know, all the things he previously claimed to know nothing about. Whoopsie! And just as Gino confronts him about this obvious lie, they're interrupted by screams from another murder. It seems Mr. Whiteley may have struck again. And take note, right before the attack, the leather jail guard that propositioned Patrick is given a Mai Tai. Honestly, that scene got me. It was subtle and scary. This is essentially telling our characters that there is nowhere safe for them that they can hide from Whiteley's grasp. Meanwhile, we meet Stu. What? Stu answers a random payphone call from good old Sam. He invites Stu to a party back at his place. And you know how it goes when you hang out with a man you just met over a payphone in the middle of the night. One thing leads to another and bam, you're locked in a cage in his basement. Stu seems pretty upset. He should have thought twice about, okay, here you go.
Oh, the stew is stew!
Mallory, come here and stick your finger down my throat!
Back with Hannah, she gets a frantic phone call from Fran, played by Sandra Bernhard. I can't believe we haven't talked about Sandra Bernhard and her lesbian trio that joined Gino at the Native at the end of the episode. I love Sandra Bernhard, and I love that this season is taking place in the 80s because Bernhard's been making awesome gay content since the 80s.
Hey, it's Michelle Visage. Do you want gay
Take note that Hannah sees a spooky dude with a chain right before Fran gets there. Fran claims to know what's happening to Hannah's patients and the deer on Fire Island. She says a group of vulnerable people are under attack by the US government. And this episode ends with Patrick and his boss, Cal Penn, who might also be closeted, discover 5 severed hands from 5 different victims, which looks to be Mr. Whiteley's work. Okay, let's hit the Easter eggs before we get out of here, and I think theater nerds might have appreciated these 2 episodes. There are many overt nods to William Friedkin's film, Cruising. A detective played by Al Pacino investigates a serial killer in New York City's leather scene in the late 70s. There's even a direct reference to an interrogation scene where the cops call in a large man wearing a jockstrap and a cowboy hat. And on the DVD commentary, the director said that the slap was a real police interrogation method that was designed to have others question the victim's credibility. The subplot of the season with Dr. Hannah, who's researching a mysterious disease that has infected deer on Fire Island, seems to be an analogy for the early days of the AIDS crisis, when the disease was dismissed by the media and government officials as the gay plague. Hannah might be inspired by Dr. Linda, and I'm sorry if I butchered this, Laubenstein, one of the first physicians in the US to recognize the epidemic. In her 2 performances, Patti LuPone sings Fever by Peggy Lee and Calling You by Holly Cole. On top of that, the soundtrack for this season looks to rival AHS Hotel. The season so far is filled with 80s and 90s hits. We got Blondie's Call Me, The Cure's Faith, and Willie DeVille's Heat of the Moment, which, surprise, was on the Cruising soundtrack. Finally, as is the standard for every AHS season, this episode features a treasure trove of theater nods. Not only did we get Tony winner Patti LuPone, but Joe Mantello is also a theater legend in acting and directing. In episode 2, Mantello's character Gino is literally saved by angels. This could be a double whammy. Not only is this a nod to Mantello's first theater gig in Tony Kushner's Angels in America, this might also be a nod to the play Rent, which also deals with the HIV/AIDS crisis. In the play, Tom Collins is saved by the character Angel. Okay, that's it for me over here, everyone. I'll see you next week where Ryan and I should tackle the next 2 episodes that drop. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.